think we're talking about? It's culture, of course. Absolutely. And you're part of it. That's a scary thought. Yeah, that's right. You can't escape it. You just can't get out of it. You are part of culture. And, culture has many manifestations. For example, a couple of nights ago, would you please give me that echo chamber once again? Hello, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll take you home again, Kathleen. That's nice. Oh, that's it. It isn't that good. I just don't. I hate sycophants. Now get off my feet, will you? This crowd comes out here and starts kissing my tennis shoes. That's ridiculous. But I will say this. I am surprised to note that not one of my culture vultures out there has been able to tell me what country correctly that song is truly identified with. I'll take you home again, Kathleen. And I'll give you a clue. It is not, I repeat, not Ireland. All right, I'll tell you a very disappointing fact. That song was written in Plainfield, Indiana. Plainfield, Indiana, which, by the way, is also very famous as the home of Forrest Tucker. So you can see they've contributed a great deal to American culture. I'll dream again. What famous novelist, what famous American novelist wrote the words to a famous tune also dealing with Indiana? Oh, the moon is bright upon the Wabash, dee-dee. La-da-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. Fields of new mown hay. Oh, the moon, do-do-do-do-do-do-do. La-da-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. You know the song? Yes, you know, and it was a very famous, probably one of the 10 great American novelists wrote the lyrics to that. Da-da-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. La-da-da-da-da-da-da-dee-dee. You don't know anything about the rivers of Indiana, do you? The Calumet. The entire region is named after that river. That's called the Calumet region, which is in the northwestern corner of Indiana. And it also includes that little corner of Illinois. That's called the Calumet region. Now, it was named after that river. Have you ever seen Calumet baking powder? Okay, that's named after that area, believe it or not. And what is on the can of the Calumet baking powder? Well, there's a picture of an Indian. Correct. That is a Calumet Indian that is shown on that picture. And that is the name of a tribe. In case you're curious, it's also an Indian word for peace. Chicago is an Indian word. Chicago. What Indian tribe was this involved with? Chicago. In the Indian term, it was Chicago. Chicago is the way. CH, like a little line, G, G. Chicago. It was not really truly Chicago, but the way they pronounced it, the early settlers heard them say this, and they were always saying that, and it designated the place where this city grew, the word. And so they began to use that word. The settlers used it because it was a natural thing. It was already called that when they came there. I'll give you a clue. The word begins with the place where. What? Oh, that's right. The place where wild onions grow. And that's very true. As a matter of fact, all through the area there, one of the things that in that area, this is the Sandy Lake country there, wild onions do grow there, and still to this day grow there. I lived, very short distance from that area, right around the bend of the lake there, and we used to go out all the time and pick wild onions. And they still do that, so don't think I'm talking about the old days. I was just out there, and they still do. Indian culture was much more part of our life. Did I ever tell you about the time? I still kick myself when I think of one of the things that we did that I've never forgotten. There's a big swamp out there. See, that's very swampy country. Used to be lake bed. In fact, most of northern Indiana and that whole area of Illinois, at one time, Lake Michigan was a much larger lake than it is now. And the lake extended almost down to Indianapolis. So that whole area at one time was underwater. And as the water receded over the millennia, these are glacial lakes, and as the water receded, of course, the bed came up and it became habitable and people moved into the area. But parts of that still remain swampy, which, the lake has not completely receded from it. And there's a whole swampy area down there. And I grew up living right next to that huge swamp. It's a fantastic swamp, and it still exists. It's a tremendous swamp that's about, I'd say 7-8 miles in one direction, about 12 miles in another, and it's really interesting country. Now, that type of swamp is a lake swamp, which is a different from a creek swamp or a backup swamp or a seepage swamp. This is a lake swamp, and the bottom of this swamp is sand. It's not mud, it's sand. So it makes a very interesting kind of swamp. Now, one day, we used to go into the swamp all the time, just the way kids today go to Central Park. We used to go to the swamp, and the swamp was very close. It was like a block and a half away. You just walk down into the swamp. Well, as we would go into the swamps, we would go back out into the swamp. The swamp consists of a whole series of hillocks. Is this interesting to you or not? It consists of hillocks, little clumps of land that rise above the general water area there. So you could go from clump of soil to clump of soil, and you could get deep into the swamp, and nobody ever went there because it was deep into the swamp, and there were all kinds of, there were reasons. For one thing, it was one of the few areas around there where the cottonmouth was very popular. Well, he wasn't popular. He was very common. The cottonmouth. You've ever seen a cottonmouth? You've heard of them. Have you ever seen or heard of the timber rattlesnake? Well, we had timber rattlesnakes back, the very deadly rattlesnake. There was also other things in the area there. At one time, that was one of the last strongholds, one of the last areas outside of certain portions of the far northwest where the timber wolf still lived. There were other things out there. For example, we used to see horned owls. We'd see, have you ever seen the great horned owl? This is an unbelievable sight. If you've never seen a great horned owl, you have never seen why certain birds play a mystical role in primitive people's religions. This bird does look like a curious ghost from some other world. And he's rarely seen before dark. And that's another thing that adds to him. He'll be seen at dusk, and you'd see a great horned owl all of a sudden swoop over the water. And they're big, they're great. That's why they're called the great horned owl. And they have these huge yellow staring eyes, and they make an odd sound. It's really almost like a true hoot. It goes hoo hoo. They'll go, and you'll hear that thing echoing, and it has a long piercing echo. And so you can hear for miles the sound of a great horned owl. Why? I don't know. It's a curious sound. It sounds at one time it will sound soft and quiet, but strangely enough it has come from miles. And even when you're near it, it's quiet, but it pierces. It goes for a long distance. And so the owl will go whoo whoo. Now, what he's doing is warning other great horned owl, male owls, away from that territory. And he is a deadly hunter. The great horned owl, we would see him swoop down suddenly, and you would see him fly, and he will have a rabbit. He will fly with a rabbit in his talons. And we saw this all the time. It's a great educational sight. I mean, teaches you that some got it and some ain't. And also we would see, among other things, one time we saw the great northern owl, or the white owl, which is an owl rarely seen in the United States. This is an owl that when standing will stand maybe 2.5 feet to 3 feet tall, and he's snow white, the snowy owl. A spectacular sight, and a ghostly sight. They'll stand quietly, and then suddenly you'll see them just slowly, they'll just plane up. They have a great way of flying. You want to hear? Listen, I'll tell you. What brought this up? You know, people tend to think that nature is a thing of the past. They really do. It's funny. We've become so, I suppose, urbanized in our urban areas. We're not aware that between the urban areas in America, which are getting more and more concentrated, not spread out, but concentrated, that between those areas often lie trackless wilderness. I mean, and where you really see true wilderness animals. Now, this particular swamp, if you want to know more about it, one time we were out there. It was about 5 of us, me and Schwartz and a couple of other guys, went out to the swamp. We used to always go to the swamp. Now, why do we go to the swamp? Well, because of what was there, and it was an exciting place in a nutty way, and we just sort of accepted it as part of life, that's all. It never would have occurred to me that at one time I would be telling people about living next to a swamp, and it would be almost like telling them you grew up next to the Sahara Desert. It's very, very exotic to them. Well, we used to go, swamps have, more than any other place that I know of, have drastic changes in the seasons. The seasonal changes are fantastic in a swamp because, for one thing, you have a great frog population. And the frog really is a seasonal creature. I mean, in one time, he's a little pollywog, and the next thing you know, he's another thing, and so on down the line. We used to go seining for him. And yeah, we would catch pollywogs. We never went for the live frogs, the biggies. We went down there for, although a friend of mine did. A friend of mine sent his way through college in that very swamp, going out after frogs, for frog legs, and also for lab use. And this guy used to go out on a Saturday. You go out at night for frogs, of course. He'd go out at night with, and he had a license. He had to be licensed for this. And he would go out with a light, and he would net frogs with a butterfly net. You catch them, biggies. And he would catch these big frogs. And one night he had a terrible experience with the frogs, that he had a gunny sack. Now, he was a med student. And, of course, he spent a lot of time studying. He was like 27 hours a day working on the med courses that he was taking. And all weekend and large amounts of time during the week, he would go out to the swamp to catch frogs, which he sold to the lab. Well, one night, he was out there after like 174 straight hours of anatomy or something, and he's out in the swamp in the dark, and he has a raft, is what he used, and he was poling himself around on a raft there, and he was catching the swamp frogs, biggies. And these are big ones. I'm talking about frogs that go maybe 1.5 pounds, the big ones. Bullfrogs is what he was catching. And he had a special order. They wanted these bullfrogs. They didn't want the little frogs. They wanted the biggies. So that's a special order, and it costs a little more, you know. And you know the kind, you ever hear a real bullfrog out in the swamp? Oh, boy. You know, they go like, give me a little echo chamber. I can give you a bullfrog. Then there's a long pause, and he's waiting, see, to see if he gets any answer. Anybody's going to get smart with him, see. That bullfrog is sitting there. And where are they sitting? Well, they're sitting right on the edge of the water. See, a bullfrog is always ready to depart for other parts. And he is sitting right on the edge of the water, usually concealed under overhanging sawgrass, something like that. And he's announcing that 2 things. He's announcing for any male who wants to come around and knock the chip off his shoulder, he is perfectly willing to deal with him. A frog is a very aggressive creature. Did you know that? Very, very. On the other hand, he is also announcing that he is now standing at stud. And if there's anybody interested within a 4-mile area, he is ready. You don't know what the term standing at stud means? It's not a poker game in this case, although it can be. Nevertheless, he is under that little overhang of sawgrass, and he has a specific pattern. They have what they call the 2-beat pattern and the 3-beat pattern. Sometimes this is a single beat pattern. Did you know that a real frog aficionado can tell the difference between? There's a lot of subtle differences in the way they call, but a standard North American bullfrog, standing at stud, usually has a 2-beat note, something like this. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. He's standing at stud and he's ready. He's just sitting there waiting. All right, now, then there's the kind that gives a slight moo. Have you ever heard that time? Ooh. 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 That's another variety, and it's an interesting sound. But nevertheless, you hear all these various frogs out there, so you get to know them. I mean, you get to know all the various sounds, and once in a while a really big daddy frog will move into the neighborhood, and he will announce this, and all summer you will hear this same frog, and often you will hear him for several years running. That same frog announces his presence. And so when you live next to a swamp, you learn all these things. Well, tonight I have to apologize to you. We are speaking of things that Norman Mailer does not even suspect exists. And we're going to tell you a little more about life out there where the animals and the creatures crawl. They were known as varmints. You know, the word varmint here. You know what a varmint is? A varmint. They even have things called varmint guns. Yes, a special type of gun you use to go after varmints. And a varmint is an animal that raises holy hell and does nothing in return. He's a varmint. He comes in, steals your chickens. I've seen varmints steal tires right off a guy's cars. Did I tell you about the time that the possums ate the tires off the Oldsmobile? Mr. Anderson's, oh, you don't... yes, I saw a guy one time come out so damn mad out of his garage. He had a brand new axe, an axe handle, you know, a big handle. A brand new axe, beautiful axe. And a porcupine ate the handle right off of his axe. And he got so bugged, he came running out of the garage, hollering to his wife. He kept hollering, "Emma, get the gun, get the shotgun, I'm going to get that damn possum." And he was yelling, see? And well, it wasn't a possum, actually. It was a porcupine. And he says, "I'm going to shoot that damn porcupine, I'm going to eat him." Now, out there, suitable revenge on an animal is when you eat him. You eat them. You never thought of that, did you? And he went out and tried to get that porcupine. By the way, porcupine makes fairly decent eating, in case you're interested. But nevertheless, yes, he's a very. In fact, they call him the pork of the woods. Pork. Yeah, it's exactly what the phrase comes from. All right, and he's very pig-like, porcine. And interesting little animal. Don't get too close, but there's a lot of animals you shouldn't get too close to in the woods. I'm just going to warn you. Very many animals. Stay very clear of any bear that you happen to see. Do not get near any bears. We had bears in the swamp. Did you know that Jersey has bears? I'm serious that there is a population of bears in Jersey, real bears. Black bears, correct. There is no such thing, though, as a harmless bear. Contrary to popular opinion, that the bear can cause all kinds of excitement, especially if you get between the bear and its cub, or if you get if you startle a bear, and it's easy to do that. If people have come out on their back porch, and just without any warning, they'll flip on the back porch light and startle a bear, and he will do one of two things: he will disappear into the darkness, or you will disappear into the darkness. I would suggest that if a bear is moving towards you, move fast. Don't say, "Oh, isn't he nice? Look, he's friendly. He's coming over here. He wants to be petted." Zap, no foot, just like that. But I don't want to discourage you about the outdoors. I want to tell you though about my friend with with the frogs. Great moment. It is a legendary moment. They still speak of it. In fact, folk singers sing of this moment. Yes, you hear folk singers out there. They sing of this moment. It's called The Night of the Frogs. It's a song. It's a great song. And it happened to this guy who lived in our neighborhood. It actually occurred. He was a student. And a very, very nervous guy. He could not, the worst thing that can happen to him was have an embarrassing moment. Well, he went out this night after 174 straight hours of work on organic chemistry, pharmacology, other little goodies like that. His head was filled with all kinds of equations. He'd been studying in no sleep for weeks. And now he's out in the woods hunting big bullfrogs, which he sold for roughly $1 a piece, these biggies. And so if you got 40 or 50 bullfrogs that night, that's not bad for a medical student out in the woods. So he's out there, and now he's had a good night. It was one of those nights in June when the bullfrogs are out and the moon is right and the mosquitoes are right. Everything has to be right to get the frogs out. And he's hit the double jackpot. He has a gunny sack full of frogs. He had about 150 of them, and they're all in his gunny sack, which he had a big heavy rubber band around the top of this thing. He flings it over his shoulder, and he comes back out through the swamps. At that point, he did what he always did. He waited at the bus terminal there. There was a bus stop. This was not out in the wilderness. You got to remember, the swamp was the wilderness, but there were roads that went along it. And it just so happened that there was a road that went along there, and there was a bus stop, and there was a bus that came past there every night, say like 11:30 at night, something like that, the last bus. And so he's waiting for it. He finally gets on the bus. He climbs aboard the bus, which he had done many times in the past. And this bus was always loaded because a lot of people coming back from the last show and that kind of stuff. There's about maybe 30, 40 people on the bus. And he gets on the bus and goes to the rear of the bus where he always sat. And he sat down in his smelly clothes, which smelled of the swamp. And remember, he is a famous medical student, and he's a very, very nervous guy. He's sitting in the back of the bus. Everything's cool. And the way he told it later, now I have to revert to another tense. The way he told it later, he was not even aware of the fact that he had fallen asleep. He said that he was so dead tired, this is how it later came out in court and everything else, he was so dead tired, he did not know that he fell asleep. You know, you can sit down and you know you're sleeping, you doze off. He sat down there and he said the next thing he knew was thousands of people screaming and running around. The bus has stopped. He didn't know where the hell he was. He jumped up and he starts to run around with the crowd too. They're all yelling and screaming and hollering, "Oh, public!" He figured the bus was on fire. Who the hell knows? They're running around, and people, old ladies are fainting, and guys are jumping out of the windows. The bus driver is yelling, and the police are coming, and the squad cars are arriving. They're screaming and yelling. He runs to the door, and everybody's yelling. He's pouring out, and he sees pouring out of the door thousands of gigantic bullfrogs are leaping out of the bus door, and they're jumping all over the old ladies. They're carrying her. He had fallen asleep, and his sack had fallen down right beside him. He had it right down there. He had it tucked under the seat, see? The sack fell down like that, and somehow the rubber band came off, and thousands of frogs decided to leave, and they didn't want any more of this bus riding, and they were going back to the swamp. Well, my friend was knee-deep in swamp, frogs, ladies screaming, guys fainting, people got their glasses broken. One guy lost his shoe. They never found it. It was a terrible scene. And he wound up in the slam that night with all he had was his gunny sack left, and he had a couple of frogs that were brought in as evidence. And he was accused of a vile and malicious prank. How would you like to be sitting there accused of a vile and malicious prank? I think the word vile adds a lot to it. He was accused publicly of a vile and malicious prank, that he had loosed these frogs on purpose in the bus to cause confusion and fright and various other things, and the poor unsuspecting bus passengers, and he was up for a big charge. Well, the judge sat up there, and my friend was in the court, see, and he sat up there and he says, you know, it's the damnedest thing. He said, I can't explain it to you. He says, but these frogs, they're in the court. He says, with everybody sitting around, they started to do what frogs always do, you know, going, lunk, lunk, lunk. And the judge is getting madder and madder, and the frogs are yelling. The guy laid a $100 fine on him, gave him a 30-day suspended sentence, and he said from that day on, his life was changed. Now he's a jailbird. He's got it on his record wherever he goes. And, you know, he's a very famous physician now. He's a surgeon. And he said that he applied at one of the very famous Midwestern clinics, you know, for argument's sake, let's say the Mayo Clinic, right? And he applied there, and of course they investigated him. And the guy sat down with him in the personal investigation. He says, Doctor, we find that you have impeccable credentials, and your professional achievements have been very impressive. And that new suture you invented, the Grubbage suture, is world famous. But we do have a curious report. Of course, obviously, there must be two Grubbages. We have a Grubbage that was charged, hi, George, of a vile and malicious trick, and was sentenced to 30 days, a suspended sentence. Obviously, it's not you. We just thought we'd check. Yeah, it was me. He says, it was you, Dr. Grubbage? He says, yes, it was me. It was a vile and malicious trick. Yes, 30 days. Was suspended. They didn't make me serve the time. I was suspended. It was, you know, 7-year thing. It's okay. I'm clear now. I mean, I could pull another one down. I wouldn't, you know, get the doctor says, well, excuse me, Dr. Grubbage, we'd like to know what your vile and malicious trick was. He said, well, I had 150 frogs, see, and I was sitting in a bus. It was a number 2 bus, and I had them in a gunny sack, and yeah, they didn't give him the job. No, wait a minute now. I just want to tell you, it came out happy, though. The incident is now being made into a Walt Disney movie, so it's all right. He's come out of it clean, and he's survived. And he's being played by a 9-year-old red-headed moppet. As you know, Walt Disney, all pictures are about 9-year-old red-headed moppets with freckles. Right, you know that. And, of course, the bus driver's an evil guy who wants to kill all frogs, you know, played by, what's his name, Lloyd Nolan? He plays all evil guys that want to kill frogs, the kid's own, right? Okay, and Haley Mills plays the lovable, cuddly school teacher. So you can see the whole script, right? Okay. Kid falls asleep over his geography book. His mother's dying because she needs the serum, and he's out in the swamp catching frogs to buy the serum. You know the whole thing. Okay, it's going to be it's a happy ending. I didn't tell you the real reason I was going to tell you this story, did I? Well, I better not lay it on you now. It's too late to tell you the whole story, and I want you to sleep easy tonight. Okay. Did you ever see water moccasin? I did. I caught one time in a gunny sack seine. We used to use gunny sacks for every possible thing. George Doppler's house, as a matter of fact, had gunny sack tablecloths. His mother made them out of gunny sacks. They were very poor people. They were, actually. George used to wear gunny sack pants to work and to school, every place. But I one time caught a water moccasin inadvertently. I was after pollywogs, and I caught a water moccasin in my gunny sack. And that was the day that Schwartz set the freeform 100-yard dash record. He was invisible. He was a blur. It was unbelievable. Wait a minute.